This is a tale from the very end of Jesus' life on earth. It tells the story of how Jesus appeared to one of his most loyal followers, Thomas, and proved the value of faith. To understand this story, we need to look at the last days that Jesus was alive on earth. He endured many difficulties and suffering, and yet overcame these trials and inspired love and hope in his followers. Throughout the last years of his life, Jesus traveled the Holy Land to spread his message of kindness and to teach the people about the power of God's love. He traveled far and wide and performed many miracles throughout his time. As more and more people began to hear Jesus' message, he became quite famous, and the people of the land knew him as a holy teacher and the Son of God. He gained many devoted followers throughout the land, the very first Christians. The most devoted of these were his 12 most loyal followers. They were known as the Apostles, and they traveled with Jesus as he made his way across the Holy Land. Some of the most famous apostles include Peter, John, and James. The apostles followed Jesus across the land as he spread God's love, healed the ill of their sicknesses, and fed the hungry. They watched as Jesus' fame and reputation grew throughout the land. After several years, Jesus had begun to earn a considerable amount of influence in the land, as people were changed and healed by his works. After a time, the influence began to worry the people in power. The priests and leaders of the land began to pay more and more attention to Jesus as he performed his teachings. They did not approve of his growing influence in the land, or the fact that people were thinking of him as the Son of God. So the priests and leaders gathered together to create a plan that would get rid of Jesus and end the threat of his growing influence among the people. Judas, one of Jesus' 12 apostles, agreed with the priests and leaders to betray Jesus. He agreed that he would hand over Jesus to the religious leaders in exchange for money. He took a bag of 30 silver coins in exchange for revealing where Jesus was to the Roman guards who controlled the territory. Jesus and his apostles were gathered together in a garden, praying together. As they prayed, the traitor Judas led the priests and the Roman guards to the garden. When they arrived, the guards cornered Jesus and placed him under arrest. They declared that he was to be taken to trial. Jesus was presented in front of a grand council, and they asked him questions about his teachings. They asked if he was truly the Messiah and the Son of God. They accused him of breaking religious laws and practicing sorcery. Instead of denying the accusations, Jesus remained quiet. He knew that his teaching spoke for itself and did not try to argue with the council and try to defend himself. Jesus' silence angered the council, and they declared that he was guilty. For his crimes, the council decided that Jesus deserved to die. The High Council of religious leaders decided that Jesus should be taken to trial with the Roman leaders so that he could be punished for his supposed crimes. They presented Jesus before the Roman leaders and the ruler of the territory, a general named Pontius Pilate. It was before Pontius Pilate that Jesus' fate would be decided. The most important question Pontius Pilate had to ask Jesus was whether it was true. Was Jesus really the King of Jews, as the people claimed? Jesus answered Pilate's question.
I came into the world to bear witness to the truth, and all of those who are on the side of truth listen to my voice.
Pontius Pilate found that this answer made Jesus guilty, as he did not deny his claim as the King of the Jews. He was indeed sentenced to be executed. There was one last chance for Jesus to be spared. As part of the Jewish holiday of Passover, the religious leaders were allowed to choose one condemned prisoner to be saved. Instead of sparing the life of Jesus, they chose to set free a murderer named Barabbas in his place. With his last chance for freedom taken away, Jesus was sentenced to die on a cross, a traditional method used by the Romans to punish and get rid of convicted criminals. The Roman guards placed Jesus on the cross, where he was to die. In order to make fun of him for being the King of the Jews, they placed a sign which read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." But even then, Jesus' followers remained devoted to him. They watched as he suffered on the cross, bravely accepting his fate and dying for the salvation of God's people. When Jesus finally died on the cross, they took him down to be buried. His followers could not believe that they had lost their teacher and leader and wept over his body.
"Oh, Jesus, they have taken us from you.
They have killed the Son of God.
And now we must bury him."
And so the apostles took Jesus to his tomb. Once he was placed inside, they said their final goodbyes and covered the entrance to the tomb with a large boulder that took several people to move. But this was not to be the end of Jesus' time on earth. Three days later, Mary Magdalene went to visit Jesus' tomb and was shocked to discover that the boulder had been moved and the tomb inside was empty. Jesus was gone.
"How can this be? Jesus has disappeared."
Just as Mary discovered the empty tomb, Jesus appeared to Mary.
Mary,
"Teacher?"
do not hold on to me, for I have not returned to my Father yet. Go tell my brothers this news.
"Yes, teacher, I will."
Mary ran to the house where disciples stayed and delivered the great news.
"I have seen the Lord."
She told them what Jesus said to her. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together, with the doors locked for the fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said,
Peace be with you.
He appeared to them, and they were shocked to see that the Lord was in fact risen. Jesus' body was still covered in the wounds he got when he was put on the cross. The apostles were overjoyed to have their Messiah back, and thanked God for this miracle. The only apostle who was not there when Jesus appeared was Thomas. When he returned to the house of the apostles, Jesus was already gone.
"Thomas, wait until you hear the good news.
Jesus has risen.
He appeared here today."
But Thomas was skeptical. He did not believe that such a miracle was possible.
"But it is true."
I will not believe that Jesus has in fact returned from the dead, unless I see him and I see his wounds from the cross.
1 week later, the apostles were once again gathered. Even though the door was locked, Jesus appeared inside.
Peace be with you.
Then he turned to Thomas, who before now had doubted Jesus' return.
Thomas, put your fingers here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe.
Jesus offered Thomas to touch his wounds, to prove that he had in fact returned. But Thomas was too shocked to move.
My Lord and my God.
Thomas could see that the other apostles were telling the truth. Jesus was risen.
Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed.
And that was how Jesus appeared to the apostle Thomas and showed that even though we may not always be able to see Jesus, blessed are those who believe his word, even without seeing him. Faith with proof is strong, but faith without is even stronger.